Hey everyone, I get a lot of questions about how I make my emulator so fast for Android, how I keep it on top of the screen, and just normal settings that I use. So today I want to break it down, so tune in. Hey everyone, I'm James Montemagno. I'm a program manager over at Microsoft, and I've been a Xamarin developer and Android developer for over 10 years. I love everything about Android and iOS, of course, too. But one of the things that always has upset me is the Android emulator. And it's gotten so much better in the most recent years. But there's a lot of tips and tricks that I've just developed over the years of using the Android emulator. So if you're brand new, I want to give you a walkthrough of how to get set up. But then, of course, some of the settings I use, such as keeping on top of the screen and some other things like playing around with the sensors. So let's check it out. Now, Android emulators are complicated, okay? They just are. In fact, if we look at the Xamarin documentation or just general Android documentation, there are sort of different flavors of how to run the Android emulator. There's sort of three, okay? First is to run it on Intel HAXM. So if you have an Intel processor and you have the ability to do the hardware acceleration part of it, you can use Intel HAXM. And that's what I use on my machine. Now, the problem with Intel HAXM on a PC is that if you need to use Hyper-V, then you run into a conflict. This was a big problem early in the days if you needed to do Docker development that used Hyper-V. Nowadays, you have WSL2, so there's no longer really a conflict. So you can go back and use Intel HAXM if you're there. Now, beyond that, though, if you have an AMD processor, well, you're going to have sort of a problem because you don't have Intel processors there. So that means that you're going to have to use Hyper-V, and those Android emulators are super quick. I have another video that I made. It's like 1 minute long on how to set that up, but I'll link to this documentation so you can decide what you want to do if you want to use Hyper-V with the hypervisor framework. So that's pretty good here, okay? And we'll probably even update this to make sure that you kind of know that you can use WSL2 there too. Now, over on Mac, though, you're good. You just use Intel HAXM and you're fine. No problem there at all. So you're good. And of course, Linux, same thing. You should be just fine. Now, I'm, of course, coming from the Xamarin world. So we have over here, we have the Android Device Manager. Let me put this in the center of the screen. This enables you to create new Android emulators. It's very similar to the one in Android Studio. You can customize anything. I, for some reason, have just always stuck with Android 9. I don't know why necessarily, but I always have for some reason, but you can create any different version here. Some people like to use the Google APIs and put Google Play Store on it. I find it to be a little bit slower. If you don't need Google APIs like Maps or anything like that, or need access to Google Play Store, you can uncheck those. I think it just makes it faster in general, less things to update on your device. So let's go ahead and start this up here. This is just a normal Android 9, no googly stuff on it at all. And it's just going to boot up over here. All right. Oh, I was playing with .NET MAUI earlier. Let's go ahead and flip this away. There we go. Cool. I'm going to zoom out and I'm just going to put this right in the center of the screen here. And the first thing that you'll note is that my Android emulator stays right on top of the screen. Okay. So see how it's moving around. If I actually bring up the font here again, it's right on top. If I click away, nothing, right? So that is a setting that actually is inside of this triple dot. This triple dot area is one of the most important parts of the Android emulator because it gives you access to all sorts of things that you can emulate on the emulator, if you will. Yeah, because it's not a simulator, it's an emulator. So basically it gives you the ability to have more of a physical device, even though this is an emulator. So we can see here, here's a location. So it's set by default to Palo Alto. You could import GPX or KML files right here or set a location. Super important there. If you're looking to test cellular and you don't want to kind of swipe down from the bottom and put it in airplane mode, you can come in and you can toggle what type of network it is, what the strength is. You can test all of those different settings and it will do that for you. Battery, what do you know? It adjusts the battery. Look, you can see it right there. It's adjusting it. You know what I mean? Camera, same thing. You can add a different virtual scenes, which are nice here. I don't really use that too much. You can emulate a phone call. You can emulate the directional pad, microphone here, fingerprint reader, so you can have different touch sensors. Virtual sensors, these are cool if you want to actually test different sensors on the device. Over here, you can actually pan it as well, left and right. And so if you're doing a game, that's super duper important there. You can even send a bug report. Well, that's pretty cool. Now, what I will say before we get to these other settings down here is this setting screen. This is really important. You can set your light theme or your dark theme, which is really important to know. Over here, you can enable clipboard sharing. So if you want to share between your desktop and your Android device, you want to have that enabled. Over here, you can enable or disable mouse wheel. So if you're scrolling on your mouse to scroll up and down, you can disable that. You can see it's kind of moving around there. If I scroll up and down, you can disable that there. There's other things like if you want a frame on top of it, you can disable the device frame. Sometimes the device frame causes some issue for people and it's just extra clutter. So if you don't want that, it's there. But most importantly, look at this one right here. Boom, emulator always on top. This is the toggle. This is the jam. So now it goes back and forth. If I toggle it on, it's always on top. Super important. It can be annoying if you're using the settings screen though, but it's one setting that I super duper like and really appreciate. That's there. Now, some of the other things, if you're using HTTP proxies, you can go in, you can turn this on. I've never used these, but this is just ability if you're doing advanced networking that you need to do that. There's also some advanced stuff for OpenGL. Again, if you're doing games, you might want to automatically toggle between some of the different OpenGL ES modes that are there. I will bring one more point over here. This is actually really nice, the record and playback. So if you start a recording, you can go ahead and play around on the emulator and then hit stop recording. And then you can save this as a WebM or a GIF, which is nice too. So you can save it and do whatever you want, which is kind of cool. We'll see, we got a little warning here. Oh, cool, nothing. Snapshots is another fascinating one. I don't know if I love or hate snapshots. I feel like on Intel HAXM, these things are pretty good and you can actually create snapshots that you can boot into. It's going to obviously, keeps more memory on disk. It's keeping an entire snapshot of your device. If for some reason your emulator won't boot up, you can turn this off. Okay. You can also just have it automatically delete invalid snapshots too. So if for some reason your emulator is just being slow or it's not starting up correctly, simply turn this off and you're good to go. I feel with Hyper-V, the snapshots seem to sometimes cause some issues on some devices. It's always hard to tell. Android on Windows is always a little bit tricky. So you can definitely turn that off there. But here, this one seemed to work and we can see the last boot that I had here, which is kind of cool too. You can always take a snapshot if you need to. The other things I'll point off is that you have more the ability over here to simply change a lot of settings from this little, I guess, quick option thing. So you have obviously volume up over here. Let me zoom out because it gets a little crazy if I zoom in. Volume up, volume down. You're able to rotate the device, which is super nice too. You can take a screenshot. Let me go ahead and rotate this again. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. That screenshot is going to be over on our desktop. So we can see it's always on top. So here's the desktop that I have here. So we have the two different screenshots that I took earlier. You can also zoom in. So this is like a zoom mode if you want to zoom in and actually magnify as well your device. And then of course you have the back arrows over here. So if for some reason those aren't on your screen, you can always get access to them there. But one thing that always sometimes confuses developers is this power button, this one here. See that? If you tap on that, it turns us off the device, okay? Now, if you then close the device, it takes a snapshot. And then if I launch it again, we're going to resume our Android emulator, but it's going to be off because I toggled it off, remember? You got to toggle it back on. So that's one thing I always try to tell people. My final tip and trick is if it's just a black screen, just tap that power button. You can't really get access to it any other way besides tapping that power button or some of these other buttons down here to actually flip it back on. So if you're like, whoa, why is this off? It looks like a power button, but it's a power button for the phone. So if you just toggled your side button as well. So it's all right there for you. So that's how you do it. Anyways, I hope that you found this video helpful, just kind of walking through the Android emulator, showing you how to set it so it's always on top. And of course, how to set it up based if you have an Intel machine or an AMD machine, or if you need to use Hyper-V or not. Like I said, I'm using the Intel HAXM one here. I also use the Hyper-V one on my other work machines like my Surface Book, which also seems to work really, really great. So no matter where you're developing, you should be good to go. But if you have any questions about any things that I've been customizing in my Android emulator, leave comments below. I definitely like to respond to any of those as fast as I can. And of course, give this a thumbs up if you like this video and you want more sort of general tips and tricks. Those thumbs ups and likes over there go into the Google algorithm of goodness and recommend this video to other people. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm going to go on a hike because I have my hiking clothes on. I hope you have a great day, great weekend, wherever you're at in the world. And thanks for watching.